The first thing I remember is the sound. Not the Christmas carols from the speakers, or the announcer's voice booming over the arena, or the crowd stomping their boots on cold metal. It was the tearing, metal shrieking, wood cracking. A deep, wrong groan from beneath us that felt like the ground itself was splitting open. Then there was falling. And wait. And his voice. "Willie, hang on. I've got you. I've got you." Everything went dark before I could decide whether I believed him. A few hours earlier, if you'd asked me how my Christmas Eve was going, I might have said too loud, too small, and smelling strongly of manure and kettle corn. In other words, just like home. I pulled my scarf tighter around my neck and blew into my hands, watching my breath fog the air. The Pine Hollow rodeo grounds weren't much in the summer, and they were even less in December. A curve of bleachers, metal rails, a squat little announcer box strung with multicolored Christmas lights that flickered when the wind gusted. But tonight the place was full. It felt like the whole town had shown up for the Christmas Eve charity rodeo, bundled in plaid and puffy jackets, misting the cold air with laughter. I hadn't planned on being one of them. 3 weeks ago, I was in Denver with a latte in my hand, staring at a glowing laptop screen and pretending my marketing job for a tech company meant something more than endless emails and fake smiles. Then my mom called, her voice thin and tired. "Your dad's been having some trouble with the barn roof, and it'd be good to have you home for Christmas, Lil. Just for a while. A while." That was how you say, "My heart is tired and I don't quite know where I belong anymore," without actually saying it. So I'd packed up my little apartment, put most of my life in storage, and driven 8 hours through blowing snow back to Pine Hollow, Wyoming, back to the ranch I grew up on. Back to the town where everyone knew everyone. Back to the place where one name still sat in my chest like a bruise. Cole Hart. I shifted on the cold bleacher, the metal biting through my jeans. Kids shrieked and chased each other up and down the aisles, their cheeks pink. Somewhere below, a bull snorted, impatient. I told myself I wouldn't look for him. But my eyes had always been liars when it came to Cole. I found him near the bucking chutes, that familiar broad-shouldered silhouette in a dark coat and a black hat dusted with snow. He was turned slightly away, talking to the stock contractor, a coil of rope in his hand. Even from this distance, I knew the way he stood weight settled, solid, like the ground trusted him. 3 years hadn't changed that. 3 years since my sister's accident. 3 years since the funeral with too many flowers and not enough air. 3 years since my dad had said Cole's name with a bitterness that tasted like metal in my mouth. 3 years since I left this town and promised myself I wouldn't come back long enough to remember how it felt to be the girl who loved the man she wasn't supposed to love. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Pine Hollow Christmas Eve Rodeo. The announcer's voice crackled through the speakers, dragging me away from my thoughts. Tonight we raising money for the families hit hardest by last summer's drought and this week's storm. So holler loud, tip your hats, and remember what Christmas is all about. The crowd cheered, boots stomping, bells jingling. Snow swirled under the stadium lights in fat, lazy flakes, turning the arena into a snow globe. Beside me, Mrs. Klein from the diner elbowed me. "Good to have you home, Lily," she shouted over the noise. "Your mama must be over the moon. She's happy to have someone else to boss around," I called back, smiling. "And about time you got a break from that big city life. But you don't see stars like this in Denver." She wasn't wrong. The sky above the arena was clear and sharp, stars pricking the dark like pinholes in velvet. There were a lot of reasons I'd come back that I hadn't admitted to anyone yet. The stars were one of them. The first rider blasted out of the chute, and the crowd roared as the bronc exploded into the arena in a blur of muscle and snow. I clapped politely, but my gaze slid back to the chutes, and found his. Cole looked up. Our eyes met across the arena just for a second. The rest of the world went fuzzy around the edges. The roar of the crowd thinned. All I could hear was my own heartbeat, hard and sudden in my ears. His gaze held mine, steady and unreadable. Even from here, beneath the brim of his hat, I could see the line of his jaw, the dark scruff, the way a single snowflake clung stubbornly to the curve of his eyebrow. I was the one who looked away first. Apparently 3 years hadn't changed that either. The bronc ride ended. People cheered. The announcer cracked a joke about Santa entering the next event. Somewhere behind me, a kid started crying, and someone rustled around in a bag for snacks. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I fished it out and saw a text from my mom. "Mom, your dad's knee is acting up. We're gonna skip the last half. Stay if you want, honey. Drive careful coming home." I glanced at the snow swirling thicker now, pushed sideways by a nervous wind. Me? Okay, I'll leave before it gets too bad. Love you. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and stood, brushing snow off my coat. The metal beneath my boots gave the smallest shudder. I frowned and looked down. These bleachers had been here since before I was born. They groaned when people stomped. They creaked in the summer heat. Everybody joked about them. Still, that vibration felt different, off. I took a step toward the aisle. That was when I heard it. A deep, wrenching crack. Like someone tearing a phone book in half, times 100. The bleacher lurched under me. People screamed. Someone yelled, "Hey!" And someone else, "Hold on!" But the words were swallowed by the shriek of metal. The world tilted. The row in front of me dropped, then buckled, like the whole structure was folding in on itself. My feet slipped out from under me. I grabbed for the rail, my gloved fingers scraping uselessly across cold metal. For a split second I was weightless, hovering in a world gone sideways. Then something hit me from the side. A body, hard and solid, wrapping around mine. The air slammed out of my lungs as we crashed down. The bleachers collapsed. It was chaos. Metal clanging, wood snapping, the crush of bodies and the sharp, terrifying certainty that the world was breaking apart, and I was trapped inside it. I had the flash of overhead lights spinning. The bitter taste of fear in my mouth. The hot, solid weight of someone above me, arms pinning me in, shielding me as metal screeched and snow and splinters rained down. "Lily!" A voice shouted, right against my ear. "Stay with me. I've got you. I've got you." Then something heavy crashed across my back, and everything went away in a rush of black. The next thing I knew, there was pain. Not sharp, exactly. More like my whole body had been turned into one big bruise. I tried to move and realized I couldn't. I was pinned, buried under weight and rubble and him. There was heat pressed along my front, a weight over my shoulders and legs, a familiar smell leather, and sweat and winter air. The brim of a hat brushed my forehead. "Hey!" The same voice murmured, lower now. "Hey, Lily. You with me?" My eyes fluttered open. The world was small and dark. A twisted angle of mangled bleacher loomed just inches from my face. Snowflakes drifted through cracks above us, glowing faintly from the distant arena lights. It smelled like dust and cold metal and something coppery. I blinked and focused on the face inches from mine. Cole. His hat was gone, his dark hair damp with sweat and melting snow. There was a cut along his temple, a thin line of blood trickling down toward his ear. His eyes stormy blue, the color of winter skies right before it snows, searched my face. I tried to speak. It came out as a croak. "Cole?" Relief crashed through his features so hard it almost broke me. His breath puffed warm against my cheek. "Yeah, it's me." "You okay? Can you feel your legs?" I tested my fingers, toes. Everything hurt, but things moved. "Think so. What happened?" He huffed out a breath that might have been a laugh if you took out all the joy. "Bleachers finally gave up the ghost." He shifted slightly, and I realized he'd curved his body over mine. His arms braced on either side of my head, taking the weight of the debris above us. "You're on top of me," I said stupidly. "Yeah," he said. That was kind of the idea. Somewhere beyond our little pocket of space, people were shouting. A child cried. Someone yelled for an ambulance. I heard the whine of a siren far off, swallowed by the wind. Panic fluttered in my chest, a trapped bird. The shadows felt too close, the air too thin. He must have seen it in my face because his voice gentled. "Hey, look at me, Lil." I did. "You're all right," he said slowly, like we had all the time in the world. "You're pinned, but you're not crushed." "I've got most of the weight on me. You hit your head?" I tried to think. There had been falling. And black. And now a dull ache pounding behind my eyes. Maybe? His jaw clenched. Okay, just stay awake for me, alright? Talk to me. I swallowed. My throat felt dry. Why? Are you here? His brows lifted a little, like he wanted to point out that asking that while he was literally plastered over me, holding up a roof of broken bleachers was maybe not the most logical question. Instead, he said softly, because I saw the rails go, and you were standing right above the hinge point. I was closer than anyone. You think I was gonna just watch you fall? Something in his voice rough made my chest ache. Out of all the people in Pine Hollow, out of everyone in those stands, it had to be him. The one man my dad didn't want anywhere near me. The one man I'd spent 3 years trying not to think about. The one man I absolutely was not supposed to love. They dug us out piece by piece. Voices came closer. Flashlights cut through the shadows. Hands reached in, steady and sure, as people called our names. Got the Heart Kid and Lily Walker over here. Easy watch that beam. Cole, you still with us, son? I'm good, he grunted. Get her out first. He refused to move until there was enough room for them to slide me out safely. Even then, as they eased the metal away and hands grasped my arms, he stayed braced above me, muscles trembling, until he was sure nothing else was going to fall. Only then did he let go. The weight lifted and cold air rushed in like a slap. I gasped. Strong hands tugged me free, dragging me across twisted metal and splintered boards until I lay flat on a patch of snowy ground. The night above me seemed impossibly huge. Snow spiraled down from the stadium lights. Red and blue emergency strobes painted the white world in pulses of color. The announcer's box sat at a crazy angle, Christmas lights dangling like snapped tinsel. People moved through the wreckage with blankets and flashlights, calling out names. I tried to sit up. Someone pushed gently at my shoulder. Easy, hun. It was Nurse Marjorie from the clinic, her gray hair tucked under a knitted hat. You stay right there a minute. Let's make sure nothing's broken. I'm fine, I insisted, even though the edges of my vision were going a little fuzzy. Just dizzy. That's your bell ringing, she said, not unkindly. Stay put. There was movement at my side. Cole sank to one knee in the snow beside me, breathing hard. Up close, I could see how pale he was beneath the scruff, the thin sheen of sweat on his forehead. You okay? I blurted. You were holding all that. I'm fine. His tone brooked no argument. Nurse Marjorie snorted. You hearts are all the same. Fine means half broke but too stubborn to admit it. Let me see that head. He endured her fussing with the patience of a man who'd been patched up by her since he was in kindergarten. While she dabbed at his cut, his gaze kept coming back to me. You're sure you can feel everything? He asked quietly. I wiggled my toes in my boots. Moving hurt, but it was a normal kind of hurt. Yeah, I think I'm just going to be one giant bruise. Something eased in his shoulders. Good. My throat closed up. I swallowed and tried again. Thank you. For, his jaw flexed. You don't have to thank me for that, but I did. I just didn't know how to do it with my dad's voice in the back of my mind, all hard edges and old grief. If anything ever happens to another one of my girls around that man, Nurse Marjorie gave us both a brisk nod. We're setting up triage in the office. Ambulance is on its way, but with this storm it may take a while. You both are walking and talking, so you're last on the list. Try not to faint on me and I'll bring you some hot cocoa. She moved off to the next group. I let my head fall back into the snow for a second, closing my eyes. The wind knifed through my coat. Sirens wailed closer now, then Dopplered as they stopped near the front gate. People murmured prayers. A kid somewhere was still sobbing, comforted by a low, soothing voice. Beside me, the snow crunched. Cole shifted like he might stand. Panic spiked, sharp and irrational. I reached out blindly and my fingers brushed his sleeve. Brushed his sleeve? I reached out blindly and my fingers brushed his sleeve. He stilled. I opened my eyes. Don't go, I said, before I could second guess it. My voice sounded small in the big, broken world. Just stay. For a minute, his expression softened, just a fraction. Snow clung to his hair. A smear of dirt cut across his cheek. He looked like every winter night I've ever known, hard edges and cold air and a warmth you had to get close to feel. I'm not going anywhere, he said quietly. Not tonight. The blizzard rolled in hard. By the time they treated the worst of the injured and loaded 2 folks into the ambulance, one with a broken leg, another with a dislocated shoulder, the roads were already turning treacherous. Wind howled across the empty fields, shoving at the drifting snow. The sheriff, hat pulled low against the storm, stood in the arena office and made an announcement. Clinic's full. The road to the hospital's half shut, and we've got whiteout between here and town. Unless you're bleeding out, nobody's going anywhere tonight. We're opening up the rodeo office, the concession stand, and the stock contractor's trailer. Hunker down. It's safer than trying to drive. I sat on a folding chair, a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, a styrofoam cup of cocoa in my hands. My head throbbed dully. My knees were scraped and my shoulder ached where something had slammed into it, but Nurse Marjorie had declared me mostly intact and moved on. Mom and Dad were stuck at home. The sheriff's deputy had reached them by radio. They were safe but snowed in. My mom had tried to insist they come get me until the sheriff gently told her that driving on these roads would be a good way to turn one injured daughter into 3 tragedies. I stared into my cocoa, watching the surface tremble slightly with the vibrations of people moving around the crowded room. My hands wouldn't quite stop shaking. Adrenaline, I told myself. Shock. People spoke in low voices. Someone passed around a plate of cookies. The smell of coffee and hot chocolate mixed with the metallic tang of fear. The door opened and a blast of snow and cold air swept in. I glanced up. Cole stepped inside, snow dusting his shoulders. He stomped his boots and tugged off his gloves, scanning the room. It didn't take him long to find me. He crossed the room with that steady, measured gait I'd seen 1,000 times in a barn aisle or along a fence line. Like nothing could rush him. Like he'd weathered enough storms to know they always passed one way or another. Hey, he said quietly when he reached me. How's the head? Still attached, I said. Hurts like heck, but I remember my name. And yours. So that's something. The corner of his mouth twitched. That it is. He glanced around at the crowded space. People were lying on mats, curled up under donated blankets. Kids had finally drooped against their parents. The coffee urn burbled in the corner. You comfortable here? He asked. As comfortable as you can be in a rodeo office in a blizzard after a building fell on you, I said lightly. Something in his jaw tightened. I've got better heat up at the ranch, he said. Generator, wood stove, real bed. It's only 10 minutes north, and my truck can handle it. He met my eyes. If you want to come. The thought of stepping out into that white roaring dark made my stomach twist. But the idea of curling up on a mat in this fluorescent lit room, surrounded by people and yet somehow more alone than ever, wasn't great either. Home was 15 minutes the other direction, down a narrow county road currently being eaten alive by the storm. I hesitated. The sheriff said, I already cleared it with him. Road north's better, less drifted. He knows my truck. He shrugged. If it feels safer to stay, I'll leave you be. But you don't have to spend this Christmas proving you're okay, Lily. The words sank into me like warm water. You don't have to spend this Christmas proving you're okay. He had no idea how close that landed to the bone. My whole life in Denver had been one long performance of I'm fine. Fine when I wasn't sleeping. Fine when my chest felt tight walking into the office. Fine when my last boyfriend told me I was too much work and asked if I'd ever thought of toning it down. I stared at him for a long moment. Snow clung to the shoulders of his coat. There was a small tear at the hem of his jeans, a dark smear where the bleachers had caught him. He looked tired, solid, real. My dad's voice rose up in my head, old and furious. If anything ever happens to you around that man, something had. And I was still here. I don't want to be alone, I heard myself say. My voice was small in the humming room. He nodded once, slow. Then come with me. The storm hit us full in the face as soon as we stepped outside. Snow drove across the parking lot in sheets, stinging my cheeks. I hunched deeper into my coat, the blanket from the office wrapped around me like a cape. Cole walked beside me, close enough that my arm brushed his with every step. His truck loomed out of the white, a big dark Ford with snow caked on the wheel wells. He opened the passenger door and offered his hand. The metal step was slick. My boots slipped and his hand shot out, palm warm and calloused around mine, steadying me. "Easy," he murmured. Something in me relaxed in spite of the wind. He'd said it like he'd said it under the bleachers. "I've got you." Inside, the truck smelled like leather and pine and faint traces of coffee. The heater roared. He climbed in on the other side, shrugged out of his gloves and cranked the fan higher. The vents blasted my frozen face, and my eyes prickled with sudden, stupid tears. He pretended not to notice. "Seat belt," he said, buckling his own. I clicked it into place. He pulled out of the lot with careful, deliberate motions, the wipers thumping a rhythm across the windshield. The headlights cut through the white, just enough to show the road. Silence stretched, filled with the storm's low howl and the hum of the engine. "Thank you," I said finally. "For what?" His eyes stayed on the road. "For everything." My throat tightened. "For tonight. For pulling me out. For this." He rolled one shoulder, like he could shrug off an entire collapsing bleacher. Anyone would have done it. Not anyone was standing right there. He went quiet for a moment. The truck's tires crunched through a drift. "I saw the rail buckle," he said finally. His voice had gone flat, like he was narrating something from far away. Felt the whole structure shiver. Looked up, and there you were. Right on the fault line. My fingers curled in the blanket. "You were closer to the exit," I said. "Didn't matter," he replied. Simply. "My legs just moved." His jaw flexed. "Wasn't gonna watch another Walker girl go down like that." There it was. Maggie. We didn't say her name. We didn't have to. It hung there between us, like the snowflakes in the headlights, visible for a moment, then gone. My chest hurt. "Cole." He shook his head, eyes still fixed on the road. "I know what your dad thinks of me. He's not entirely wrong." His voice dropped. "But tonight, if he'd been there instead of stuck at home, he would have done the same. We both know that." I stared at the side of his face, the hard line of his cheekbone, the set of his mouth. A tiny scar I hadn't seen before cut through the stubble near his jaw. "Maybe," I said softly. But he wasn't there. "You were." His grip tightened fractionally on the steering wheel. The truck's cab felt small and warm, insulated from the storm. A strange, cozy bubble hurtling through a world made of white. "It still feels wrong," I admitted. The words surprised me as they came out. "Being here. With you. Like I'm trespassing on something that isn't mine." His brows pulled together. "What do you mean?" "You and Maggie," I said. The words tasted like old dust. "You were supposed to get married. You were hers." I tried to laugh. It came out choked. "Pretty sure there is a rule somewhere about not falling for your sister's almost husband." The words hung there, heavy and terrifying. I hadn't meant to say them like that. Had never said them out loud at all. His hands tightened on the wheels so hard his knuckles went white. For a long, humming moment, the only sound was the storm. Then he spoke, low and rough. "You loved her," he said. "She loved you. You miss her. I miss her. That's all there needs to be between us, Lily." The lie was gentle. It was also clear. It stung more because of how careful he was with it. The truck hit a small drift and slid, just a little. My breath caught. He corrected it easily, calm as if we were cruising down a summer road. He wasn't going to go there. He was drawing a line, right here in this truck, between what had almost been and what could never be. My heart did a small, painful twist. "If you're listening to this," a quiet voice in the back of my mind whispered. The same voice that sometimes imagined my life as a story whispered over lantern light. "Tell me in the comments, would you trust him yet? Or would you be as scared as I am right now?" The thought made me huff out a laugh that turned into a sigh. Outside, the snow thickened. Inside, the warmth and the rumble of the engine pulled at my tired eyes. I let my head tip back against the seat and closed my eyes. If you want to hear what he says next, make sure you stay right here with me. Because tonight isn't over, not by a long shot. Cole's ranch sat on the north edge of Pine Hollow, a little cluster of buildings hunkered down against a low line of hills. I remembered it from high school summers. Barn doors yawning open, horses tossing their heads in the paddock, the smell of hay and dust. Tonight it was a soft glow in the storm. The house lights shimmered faintly through the white. The barn windows spilled a golden haze onto the whipping snow. A single strand of Christmas lights traced the eaves of the porch roof, rocking in the wind. He eased the truck into the drive, wheels crunching over packed snow, and parked near the back door. "Stay here a second," he said. "I'll get the door open. Make sure the generator's still humming." He was out of the truck before I could protest, into the storm, coat whipped by the wind. He moved like he belonged in it, like the snow and cold were just part of the same world as his heartbeat. I watched him jog up to the house, the outline of his body a dark smear against the white. The porch light flared brighter as he opened the door, then stayed a steady yellow. He came back, opened my door, and held out his hand. "Ready?" "As I'll ever be." The cold hit hard, but it was only a few yards to the house. His hand closed around mine again, sure and warm, guiding me up the steps, across the creaking porch, through the doorway into blessed heat. The first thing that hit me was the smell. Wood smoke, coffee, a faint trace of pine. The second was the warmth, wrapping around me like a hug. The entryway was small and practical hooks on the wall, a bench, a row of boots. He shut the door against the wind, and the howling muted to a dull murmur. "Here." He took my coat, careful with my sore shoulder. "Watch that step up." I toed off my boots, suddenly aware of the melting snow, the mud on the solace, the way my hair was plastered to my neck. His house was simple, honest. A narrow hall led into a kitchen with honey-colored cabinets, a table scarred by years of use, and a wood stove humming against one wall. A small living room lay beyond couch, armchair, a low coffee table with a couple of horse magazines and a lone mug. No clutter. No Christmas decorations besides a small wreath on the wall, dried citrus slices and pine cones tied with red ribbon. "You live like a cowboy stereotype," I blurted without thinking. He blinked. Then one corner of his mouth actually lifted. "I own 3 sets of dishes now," he said. "That's practically domestic." I snorted, then winced as my ribs complained. "You sure you're okay?" he asked, that crease forming again between his brows. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just sore." "Sit." He pointed at the armchair, all bossy rancher. I'll get you something dry to change into, and then we'll look at that shoulder." "You want tea or coffee or cocoa?" Tea? If it's not too much trouble." He shook his head like the idea of making a cup of tea for a bruised woman in his living room was the smallest thing he'd done all week. As he moved around the kitchen, filling the kettle, pulling down a mug, rummaging in a drawer for tea bags, I watched him. The easy, economical way he moved. The way he shook melting snow from his hair with one rough swipe. The quiet competence of a man who made fires and fixed fences, and knew exactly how far he could push his truck in a snowstorm. He disappeared down the hall and came back with an armful of clothes. "Here," he said, setting them on the back of the couch. "Sweatpants and a flannel. Drawstring so you can adjust. Bathroom's the second door on the right. I'll give you some privacy." The clothes smelled faintly like him. It shouldn't have made my pulse jump, but it did. The bathroom was small but clean, with a simple white shower curtain and a bar of soap that smelled like cedar. I shut the door, leaned back against it for a second, and blew out a shaky breath. My reflection in the mirror looked like someone who had been under a building an hour ago, hair mussed, cheeks flushed, a small cut near my eyebrow, a smudge of dirt along my jaw. My eyes were too wide. "You're okay," I whispered to myself. "You're here. You're okay." I peeled off my jeans and sweater, wincing as fabric dragged over bruises. The flannel draped over me, soft and worn, falling to mid-thigh. The sweatpants were a bit long, but the drawstring cinched neatly around my waist. I rolled the cuffs so I wouldn't trip. My clothes, wet and dusty, looked small and out of place in the hamper by the door. When I stepped back into the hall, the living room felt different somehow. Warmer, softer. The storm still muttered against the windows, but the lamp by the couch cast a golden pool of light. The wood stove's glass door glowed orange, logs crackling quietly inside. On the coffee table sat a mug of tea waiting for me, steam curling up like a signal. Cole stood by the stove, poker in hand, coaxing the fire. "You look—" He trailed off as he turned and saw me. I tugged self-consciously at the hem of the flannel. "Ridiculous?" His gaze traveled quickly. Flannel, sweatpants, bare toes, then snapped back to my face like it had someplace better to be. "Warm," he said. "That's what matters." The words were simple. The way he said them, though low, with something like relief sent a little warmth skittering through me that had nothing to do with the fire. I sank into the armchair and he handed me the mug. "Careful. It's hot." "Thanks." My fingers brushed his for a second on the handle. The tiniest spark zipped up my arm. We pretended not to notice. We fell into a soft, strange rhythm as the night wore on. The storm outside grew louder, snow hammering at the windows. The power flickered at one point and went out entirely, only to surge back as the generator kicked in with a low hum. Inside, the wood stove held a steady, comforting heat. The only light came from the lamp and the orange glow of the fire. Cole fussed over my shoulder, his big hands unexpectedly gentle as he probed the joint, making sure nothing was broken. It was bruised and sore, but the ache was dull, manageable. "Should probably get you into the clinic tomorrow and have Marjorie check for a mild concussion," he said. "But your pupils look even and you're not slurring." "That's a good sign. Are you secretly a doctor?" I asked. "The ranch doesn't stop because you whack your head on a low beam," he said dryly. "You learn what's urgent and what's just annoying." He wrapped an ice pack in a dish towel and set it against my shoulder. I hissed as the cold bit. "Sorry," he murmured. "It's fine, just cold." "Cold's good for swelling," he said. "Pain tells you you're still here. Not sure I needed that reminder." I muttered. His mouth quirked. He made himself coffee and sat on the edge of the couch, long legs stretched out, boots off, thick socks on his feet. For a few minutes we just sat there listening to the wind. "This wasn't how I pictured spending Christmas Eve," I said finally. "How'd you picture it?" he asked. I took a sip of tea. The heat slid down my throat, loosening something in my chest. "I don't know," I said. "Decorating the tree with my parents. Watching some old movie we've seen 100 times. Maybe calling my friends back in Denver, mostly pretending I wasn't. Lonely." The admission surprised me with how true it felt. He studied his coffee. "You were lonely there?" "Sometimes," I said. "And sometimes I was so busy I couldn't feel anything." "But it wasn't home." "Is this?" he asked quietly. I looked around his living room. At the wood stove, the battered coffee table, the stack of mail on the sideboard. At the boots by the door and the scent of pine in the air. At him. "I don't know what home is yet," I said honestly. "I thought it was Denver for a while. I thought if I got far enough away from this place, from all the memories, I'd feel lighter." "And?" he asked. "And it turns out your heart weighs the same on a city sidewalk as it does on a gravel road," I said dryly. He huffed out a breath that might have been a laugh. "That's a good line. I write copy for a living," I said. "Sometimes something decent slips out." He glanced at me for a moment, something thoughtful in his gaze. "You always were good with words." I blinked. "You remember that?" He shrugged one shoulder. "You did the announcements for FFA and 4-H. People listened when you talked?" "Lot of folks talk just to fill space." "You don't," I said. "Never saw the point," he replied. Silence fell again. This one felt different, less like the awkward hush between strangers and more like the quiet you get when the snow falls thick outside and you've said the important things already. "Christmas used to be easier," I murmured, surprising myself. He looked up. "Yeah?" "When we were kids," I said. "It was all about the tree and the presents and whether the cousins would bring that awful fruitcake again. Then you lose someone, and suddenly every song on the radio is a knife. His eyes darkened. "What about you?" I asked. "What does Christmas feel like now?" He stared into his coffee for a long moment. Then he set the mug down and leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped loosely. "Loud," he said finally. "Even when it's quiet, I hear all the things that aren't there anymore." His voice lowered. Her laugh, her boots on the porch, the way she'd yell at me for forgetting to turn the tree lights off at night. My throat tightened. He didn't say Maggie's name. He didn't have to. "I keep thinking," he swallowed, "that if I had insisted she stay that night, if I hadn't let her drive home in the snow, if I hadn't pushed so hard for that stupid Christmas barrel race." He trailed off. The wind moaned around the eaves. "You know what happened wasn't your fault," I said softly. His mouth twisted. "Knowing and feeling aren't the same thing." "No," I said. "They're not." He stared at the fire. The light from the stove flickered over his features, etching the lines at the corners of his eyes. "I promised your dad," he said quietly, "at the funeral, that I'd stay away, that I wouldn't drag any more of his girls into my storms." My chest squeezed. "You aren't a storm, Cole," I whispered. He huffed out a breath. "Feels like it sometimes. Everywhere I go there's something broken. A fence, a horse, a person. You can't fix the whole world," I said. "But you shielded me tonight. You threw yourself over me without thinking twice." "That's not the choice of a man I need to be protected from." His gaze snapped to mine, searching my face. The room felt suddenly very small. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. Inside, the only sound was the faint crackle of the fire and the thud of my own heartbeat in my ears. My fingers tightened around the mug. I set it down carefully on the table before I dropped it. "Cole," I said, my voice hushed for reasons that had nothing to do with the hour. "Look at me." He already was. "I'm not Maggie," I said. "I loved her. God, I loved her. But I'm not her. And you staying away all this time didn't protect me from anything. It just made sure we were all lonely in separate places." His throat worked. "You and my dad," I said quietly. "You were both trying so hard to punish yourself that you've forgotten the people still standing in the room. What happened was awful. But so is you spending every Christmas in this house alone with a wood stove and a coffee mug for company." He let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped in his chest for years. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "Do what?" I asked. "Be around you," he said, the words rough, "without feeling like I'm doing something wrong. Like every step I take toward you is a step away from keeping that promise to your dad. Away from honoring her." My eyes burned. "If you're listening to this," that same soft narrator voice in my mind murmured, "tell me in the comments. Have you ever felt guilty for wanting something new after losing something old?" I swallowed hard. "Maybe honoring her," I said, my voice shaking, "means not letting the rest of your life die with her." I drew a breath. "We don't have to know what this is. We don't have to call it anything. We're two people stuck in a blizzard who survived a bleacher collapse. We can start there." His gaze softened, something fragile and aching in it. "Start where?" he asked. "With you not spending Christmas Eve alone," I said. "With us both admitting that we tired of pretending we okay when we not." My voice went quiet. With the two of us sitting here, in this warm little room, letting the storm do whatever it wants out there while we just breathe. He sat back slowly, like the weight on his shoulders had shifted by a fraction. "All right," he said. "We can start there." Sometime around midnight, the storm began to lose its teeth. The wind softened from a howl to a steady hum. The generator's low thrum and the stove's crackle became a lullaby. My eyelids drooped. "You should sleep," Cole said quietly. "I'll take the couch. You can have the bed." I shook my head. "I'm not kicking you out of your own bed. You're injured." "I've slept on worse than a couch," I said. "And I'd rather stay near the stove anyway. The bed's probably colder." He hesitated. You sure? Yes. He nodded slowly, then got up and disappeared down the hall. I heard a door creak, a bit of rummaging, then he returned with a pillow and a folded quilt. He spread the quilt on the couch, fluffed the pillow, then paused. If you get dizzy or nauseous, he said, or if your head starts pounding worse, wake me up. You'll probably hear me throw up from across the room, I pointed out. He didn't smile. I mean it, Lily. I know, I said softly. I will. He studied me for a heartbeat longer, then nodded and stepped back. I lay down carefully on the couch, wincing as bruises made themselves known. The cushions were surprisingly soft, the quilt heavy and warm. It smelled faintly like laundry soap and wood smoke. He turned off the lamp, plunging the room into a cozy gloom lit only by the stove's flicker. Shadows danced across the ceiling. Good night, Lily, he said quietly, his voice a low rumble in the dark. Good night, Cole. I listened as his footsteps retreated down the hall. A door clicked nearly shut, and the house settled. Snow whispered against the windows. The wood stove hummed. My eyes drifted closed. If you were here with us on this ranch tonight, what's the first thing you do? Warm your toes by the fire? Look out at the snow? Or just listen to the quiet and let your heart soften for a while? As sleep pulled me under, one thought floated through my mind, soft and sure. I woke up buried beneath the one man I wasn't supposed to love. And somehow, in a world that had been so sharp and lonely for so long, that felt less like a disaster, and more like the beginning of something I hadn't let myself hope for in years. Morning came slow and silver. I woke to the smell of coffee and bacon and the soft clink of dishes. For a second, disoriented, I thought I was 17 again, home on Christmas break, listening to Mom in the kitchen. Then I opened my eyes and saw the wood stove and the unfamiliar ceiling and remembered everything. I sat up carefully. My head throbbed, but the room didn't tilt. Good sign. Cole stood in the doorway between the kitchen and living room, a spatula, in one hand, his hair damp from a shower, his t-shirt clinging to his shoulders in a way that really wasn't a fair this early in the day. Merry Christmas, he said. I blinked. It's Christmas? He smiled. A real one this time. Small but unmistakable. Yeah, we made it through the night. I huffed out a breath. Did Santa bring us better bleachers? Working on it, he said. In the meantime, he sent bacon. You made breakfast? I asked, surprised. His brow furrowed. You think I live on coffee and air? I don't know. You seemed pretty comfortable with that idea last night. He shook his head and jerked his chin toward the kitchen. Come eat. Then we'll see if the road is passable and get you home before your parents decide to snowshoe over here and drag you back. The thought made my stomach flutter nervously. I pushed the quilt back and stood, testing my legs. Achy but functional. My shoulder protested, but not any louder than the rest of me. The kitchen felt even cozier by daylight. Sunlight filtered weakly through the frosted windows, turning the snow outside into a soft, glowing blanket. A small potted pine sat on the counter, undecorated, its needles a bright green crack in the otherwise muted palette. Nice tree, I said, nodding toward it. He glanced at it, then away. Feed store giveaway. They handed it to me when I bought grain. And you kept it, I said. He shrugged. Seemed rude to throw it away. He slid a plate toward me, eggs, bacon, toast. Steam curled up, carrying the buttery smell toward my face. My stomach growled audibly. Guess I'm hungrier than I thought, I muttered. Shocked as that, he said. Your body's catching up. We ate in near companionable silence. You going to the Christmas service later? I asked, around a bite of toast. If the road's clear enough, he said. Pastor Jim's stubborn, but even he won't make folks risk their lives to sing carols. I smiled faintly. I remember when he made everyone stand outside in the snow so we could feel what the shepherds felt. He nearly got pelted with hymnals, Cole said dryly. The memory warmed a cold corner of my heart. I used to love Christmas Eve service, I said softly. All the candles, the music, everyone crammed in there together. Felt like hope. Still does, he said quietly. Sometimes it just hurts too, is all. I looked at him. Maybe this year. I said. We can let it be both. By mid-morning, the plows had made a pass down the main roads. The sky was a pale, washed-out blue, the storm spent and sulking at the horizon. Cole drove me home, the truck's tires crunching through the snow. Pine Hollow looked like it had been wrapped in cotton houses softened, fences wearing heavy white coats, the church steeple rising steady and calm above it all. My parents' ranch came into view, a long, low house, barn, corrals, all tucked into the bend of the road like it had been born there. Dad stood on the porch, coat on, hat pulled low, hand on the rail. His shoulders relaxed a fraction when he saw me. Then his gaze shifted to Cole climbing out of the driver's side, and his face hardened. I swallowed. Cole came around to my side and opened the door, offering his hand again. I took it because jumping out and falling face first into a snowbank in front of my dad would really not help my case. Dad's jaw ticked as our hands touched. "Morning, Mr. Walker," Cole said, voice calm and respectful. "Cole," Dad replied short. "Heard you were at the arena last night." "Yes, sir." He looked at me, his gaze sweeping over my face, my borrowed clothes. "You all right, Lil?" "I'm fine," I said quickly. "Just sore. Nurse Marjorie says I should get checked for a light concussion later, but she's not too worried." "And you spent the night?" Cole started to speak. I beat him to it. "At Cole's," I said. Office was crowded. The sheriff thought it was safer, and the storm was too bad to drive home. Dad's mouth thinned. "I told your mother you were safe," he said. Didn't realize I had to worry about how safe. Heat rushed to my face. "Dad, sir," Cole cut in, his voice steady. "With respect, nothing happened that you need to worry about." Lily was hurt and in shock. I wasn't about to leave her on a cold floor in a crowded room when I had heat in a bed 10 minutes away. Dad's eyes narrowed. "Funny, I don't remember asking you to look after my daughter." "I didn't do it for you," Cole said quietly. "I did it because she needed it." Silence dropped, heavy and brittle. The wind toyed with the porch step. Somewhere a horse snorted in the barn. "Daddy," I said softly, stepping forward despite the protest from my ribs. "He saved my life last night." Dad's gaze snapped to me. "When the bleachers fell," I said, my voice wobbling, "I would have been crushed. He saw it and got to me before anyone else. He covered me, held up most of the weight. If he hadn't..." I swallowed. "I don't know if I'd be standing here." Dad's face shifted just a little. A crack appeared in the hard mask of grief and anger. He looked at Cole again. Really looked at him. For a moment, I saw past the man who had lost his eldest daughter and found the neighbor who'd watched Cole grow up. The rancher who'd trusted him with his fences and his cattle. The father who'd once smiled when he caught me looking a little too long at the cowboy at the end of the drive. "Doesn't erase the past," Dad said grudgingly. "No, sir," Cole agreed. "It doesn't. But it counts for something," Dad muttered. It was more than I'd expected. He jerked his chin toward the house. "You coming in for coffee? Or you got chores to get back to?" Cole hesitated. "I should get back to the ranch. Got fences to check after that wind." "Reckon you do," Dad said. "Well, thank you. For last night." The words landed like rocks in the snow. "You're welcome," Cole said. Dad's gaze slid to me. "You coming to church later?" "If the roads are okay," I said. "Your mother's making ham," he said gruffly. "She wants you at the table, concussion or no." "I'll be there," I promised. He nodded once and turned, heading inside, the screen door creaking behind him. I let out the breath I'd been holding. "Could have gone worse," Cole said, his mouth quirking. "Could have gone better," I said. "That too." We stood there for a second, the cold biting at my ankles through the sweatpants, our breaths mingling in pale clouds. "Thank you," I said again, quietly. "For last night. For everything." "You don't owe me thanks," he replied. "But you're welcome." I hesitated. "I'll see you at church?" I asked. "If the fences hold," he said. "And if Pastor Jim doesn't decide we all need to repent by shoveling the parking lot first." I smiled. He touched the brim of an imaginary hat, his real one was in the truck, and turned to go. As I watched him drive away, A strange certainty settled in my chest. Whatever this Christmas turned out to be, it wasn't going to be like the last three. Something had shifted. In the bleachers, in the storm, in me. The days between Christmas and New Year's have always felt like borrowed time. This year, they felt like building time. The town rallied around the rodeo grounds. Miraculously, no one had died in the collapse. There were broken bones, sprains, a few concussions, and a lot of shaken nerves, but everyone was alive. People called it a Christmas miracle. Fundraisers were planned. A committee formed to figure out new bleachers, better safety codes, a fresh start. Mom and Dad insisted I rest for 2 days, fussing over my bruises and my headaches. But by the third morning, I was pacing like a caged horse. "You're going to wear tracks on my kitchen floor," Mom scolded lightly. "I just need to do something," I said. "Anything." She glanced at me over her coffee cup. "Town meeting tonight. They're asking for ideas." "You always were good at those." I'd been thinking the same thing. The meeting was held at the church hall, the only space big enough with solid floors and no risk of structural failure. Rows of folding chairs filled the room. People in boots and flannels and puffy coats sat shoulder to shoulder, murmuring. I slipped into a seat near the back. My heart thudded a little too fast. Being back in a small town meeting after years in conference rooms and Zoom calls felt strange, like stepping into an old pair of boots and realizing your feet had changed. The mayor spoke. The sheriff. The stock contractor. Apologetic and determined. They talked about investigations, about temporary seating, about insurance. Then Pastor Jim cleared his throat. "We can talk about what went wrong," he said. "And we will. But Pine Hollow's always been better at doing than talking. We need to raise money for the new bleachers and show our kids and the folks who got hurt that this town still stands together." Ideas? Hands shot up. Bake sale, New Year's potluck, silent auction. My mind started spinning, the old marketing gears kicking in. What did we have? A story. A Christmas Eve that could have gone so much worse but didn't. A town full of people who loved their rodeo grounds and their church and their neighbors. And one girl who knew a thing or two about social media campaigns. I found myself raising my hand before I could overthink it. Pastor Jim peered over his glasses. "Yes, Miss Lily. Good to have you back, by the way." "Thank you," I said, flushing. I was thinking, we could do a Pine Hollow Stands Together campaign. Share stories online. Get folks outside town involved. Post videos of the families who were helped by the rodeo over the years. Turn the Christmas Eve collapse into a story about community instead of just a freak accident. People murmured. "We're a small town," one man said skeptically. "Who's gonna care about our bleachers on the internet?" "More people than you think," I said. "When you tell a story right, folks listen, and I can help with that. It's what I did in Denver. For tech companies. This is more important." There was a rustle near the front. I spotted Cole standing along the wall, arms crossed, shoulder propped against a support beam. His eyes were on me. His expression was unreadable, but something in his gaze warmed my spine. "I like it," Pastor Jim said. "We pair that with a New Year's chili cook-off and a live stream from the church parking lot. Folks can donate online or in person. We show the world Pine Hollow's still kicking." Mrs. Klein from the diner pumped her fist. "I'll bring the cornbread. I can set up the website and donation page," I said. "And run the social media, if the town wants that." "Far as I'm concerned," the mayor said. "You just volunteered." People chuckled. "Then it's settled," Pastor Jim said. "We stand together, and we let people see it." As the meeting broke up into smaller clusters of conversation, I felt a presence at my side. "Seems Denver didn't scrub the small town out of you," Cole murmured. I turned. He was closer than I expected. Close enough that I could see the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw, the tiny scar near his lip. Close enough to smell coffee and clean cotton and something that was just him. "Guess not," I said. "You okay with all that?" He shrugged. "If it means safer stands and fewer folks getting hurt, I don't care who sees my ugly mug on a live stream." "You're not ugly," I said, then instantly wanted to crawl under a chair. He raised an eyebrow. I backpedaled, cheeks flaming. You're fine, normal, very average. Face. He laughed then. A low, warm sound that melted something in my chest. Careful, Walker, he said. Someone might think you like looking at me. If you're listening, that quiet inner narrator whispered, amused. Tell me honestly. Would you be blushing right now? Or are you braver than I am? I pressed my lips together, trying not to smile and failing. You're helping too, I asked, desperate to change the subject. Got drafted, he said. They want me heading up the safety side. Working with the engineers, the inspector, that kind of thing. Makes sense, I said. You know the grounds better than anyone. Yeah, well, his gaze flicked briefly toward my shoulder. Seems I missed a few rusted bolts. I touched his arm without thinking. His muscle tensed under my fingers, then relaxed. You couldn't have known, I said. Maybe not, he said softly. But I can know better next time. There was that bone-deep sense of responsibility, of carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Then we'll fix it, I said. Together, you make it safe. I tell the story. Deal? His eyes met mine. Deal, he said. The days that followed were full. Mornings at the ranch helping Mom with chores or sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop, building the website, drafting posts, editing video. Clips of kids in cowboy boots talking about how the rodeo gave them their first buckle. Afternoons in town, meeting with Pastor Jim and the mayor, setting up donation links with spotty internet. Teaching Mrs. Klein how to share a post without accidentally live streaming herself singing along to Dolly Parton in the kitchen. And threaded through it all, like a bright red ribbon through a plain winter coat, was Cole. We saw each other everywhere. At the feed store, where he loaded bags of grain into his truck like they weighed nothing, and I pretended not to stare at the way his back flexed. At the diner, where he sat at the counter with a cup of coffee and nodded when I came in, always leaving just enough room on the stool beside him. At the church parking lot, where we hung banners and strung lights for the New Year's chili cook-off, our fingers brushing over coils of extension cords and cardboard signs. Little moments. Like him tipping his thermos toward me on a cold afternoon and saying, "Want some?" In that casual tone that somehow felt anything but. Or me shoving my gloved hands into his pockets to warm them for a second, while we waited for the light guy to figure out which breaker he'd de-blown. Or the time I slipped on a patch of ice while filming a video and he caught me by the elbow, steadying me with that firm, familiar grip. Gonna start thinking you like saving me, I teased, breathless. Maybe I do, he said, so quietly, I almost thought I imagined it. At night, I lay in my childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind push against the old windows. My phone glowed softly on the nightstand, notifications popping up, donation alerts, comments from strangers touched by our little town's story, friends from Denver saying they were proud of me. Underneath it all, a new ache bloomed. A wanting that felt like standing at the edge of a frozen creek, knowing the ice could crack but wanting to step out anyway. 2 nights before New Year's, I found myself back at Cole's ranch. It wasn't planned. I'd dropped off some flyers at the feed store, and on my way back, I saw his truck parked at the far pasture fence line, headlights pointed at a section of sagging wire. Snow had drifted along the posts. Impulse tugged at me. Before I knew it, I turned down the road to his place. I parked behind his truck and stepped out into the cold. He straightened from where he'd been examining a post, his breath misting. "Fence broken," I called. "Just tired," he replied. Like the rest of us, I crunched across the snow toward him. My boots sank a little with each step. "Want help?" I asked. "You don't have to." "I want to," I said. He handed me a pair of gloves from the truck bed, and we fell into an easy rhythm, pulling the wire taut, me holding the post steady while he hammered in staples. Our breath sensed in small puffs. The sky above us was a deep, clear navy, stars bright and sharp. After the fence was patched, we leaned against the truck for a minute, catching our breath. The field stretched out around us, a white sea under the stars. The ranch house glowed warm in the distance, the barn a dark shape, a single window lit like a watchful eye. It's beautiful, I murmured. Cold, he said, but there was a softness in his tone. Both can be true, I said. He glanced at me, then away. Thank you, he said. For what? For the campaign, he said.
For bringing people together like this. Feels like folks are looking forward instead of just
looking back. Forward is scary, I admitted. Sometimes it's easier to sit in the wreckage and count your bruises. Yeah, he said quietly. I know something about that. I turned, leaning my hip against the truck so I could see his face. What do you see when you look forward? I asked. He stared out at the fields for a long moment. More winters, he said. More fences to mend, more calves to pull in a snowstorm. Bleachers that don't fall on people. His mouth curved slightly. Maybe some new horses that don't try to kill me. I smiled. And, somewhere in there, his jaw worked. Less empty nights. The words were simple. The vulnerability inside them was not. My heart fluttered. What about you? He asked, turning the question back on me. You going back to Denver after New Year's? The thought of my tiny apartment, my overfull inbox, the fluorescent lights of the office made my chest tighten. I don't know, I said honestly. Part of me feels like if I go back, I'll just fall into the same patterns. Work too much, sleep too little, pretend I'm not lonely. But staying... I trailed off. Staying means facing things, he said. Yeah, I said softly. Like the fact that my dad still looks at you like you re a storm on the horizon. Like the fact that seeing you at Mrs. Klein's counter feels more like home than my entire life did in the city. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. He went very still. The night seemed to hold its breath. If you're listening, that hush inside me whispered, this is one of those crack-open moments. The ones where your heart is on the table, and you don't know if he is going to pick it up or walk away. I shouldn't feel that way, I said, my voice barely above the whisper of the wind. About you. Not with everything that happened. Not with her. But I do. I have for a long time. And I don't know what to do with that. His breath came out in a cloud. Lily, he said quietly. Look at me. I did. His eyes were dark in the starlight, their color lost, but the intensity was there, sharp as ever. I can't change what happened with Maggie, he said. Nothing will ever make that okay, but loving her and whatever this is with you, they're not the same thing, he swallowed. I cared about her. I would have married her. But what I feel when I look at you, when I saw those bleachers going and my body just moved, that came from a different place. It's not leftovers. It's not second best. My heart hammered. I promised your dad I'd stay away, he continued, voice rough. Thought it was the right thing. Maybe it was for a time. But I'm starting to think that promise was more about punishing myself than protecting you. You were never a danger to me, I whispered. I could be, he said. If I let you in and then flinched, or ran, or let my guilt swallow me again. You've had enough people walk out on you. The mention of my ex made my jaw tighten. He'd walked out with a text, the coward. You're nothing like him, I said fiercely. He searched my face, like he was trying to read the truth etched there. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. But I know what it felt like to think I might lose you last week while that whole world came down. And I know I don't want to go back to pretending you read just somebody's little sister from down the road. Emotion swelled in my chest, big and bright and terrifying. If you stay, he said slowly, each word weighed. I'll be right here. If you go, I'll still be one call away. I'm not putting you on a shelf in my mind again and pretending you don't exist. I'm done hiding from my own life. My eyes blurred. The wind picked up, tugging at my hair, sending a few stray strands across my face. He reached out, almost cautiously, and brushed them back with his knuckles. His hand lingered near my cheek, his thumb hovering like he wanted to trace the line of my jaw and didn't quite dare. You feel like the first real home I've had in a long time, he said softly. The words shattered something in me in the best possible way. I stepped closer until our boots almost touched, my breath mingling with his in little white clouds. I'm scared, I whispered. Me too, he said. We stood there, on the edge of a field under a winter sky, hearts pounding in the space between us. Then slowly, like a man approaching a skittish colt, he lifted his hand and cupped my cheek. His palm was warm, calloused. The touch was so gentle it made my eyes sting. Can I? His voice caught. He cleared his throat. Can I kiss you, Lily? There were 100 reasons to say no. Maggie, my dad, the town. But in that moment, all I could feel was the steady, quiet presence of the man who had shielded me with his own body, who had sat with me by the fire while we talked about ghosts who had shown up again and again in all the small places my life had cracked and needed shoring up. Yes, I breathed. Please. He leaned in slowly, giving me every chance to step back. I didn't. His lips brushed mine, light as a snowflake at first. A question. I answered by curling my fingers in the front of his jacket and holding on. The kiss deepened, but never lost its gentleness. No rushing, no grabbing. Just warmth and steadiness and a low, quiet ache that felt like finally exhaling after years of holding my breath. My heart thudded. The world narrowed to the taste of coffee on his lips, the scratch of his stubble against my skin, the way his hand slid into my hair, careful of my still tender head. When we finally broke apart, the air between us felt warm despite the cold. Okay, I said, a little breathless. That complicates things. Yeah, he said, his forehead resting lightly against mine. But I think maybe they needed complicating. I laughed, a wet sound. If you're still here with us, that soft inner narrator whispered, tell me in the comments. Would you have let him kiss you under that winter sky? Or would you have pushed him away to keep the peace? He pulled back just enough to search my face. We don't have to figure it all out tonight, he said. We just have to tell the truth. To ourselves, to your dad, to whoever else needs to hear it. The truth, I repeated. That I love you, he said quietly. And I'm tired of pretending I don't. The words landed like a warm blanket in my chest. I'd waited 3 years to hear them. Longer, if I was honest with myself. I love you too, I said, the fear in my stomach twisting into something bright. And I'm tired of pretending I don't. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent and eternal. But down here in the snow and the stubble and the fence posts and the dust of our breath, everything had changed. Telling my dad was messy. There were raised voices. His mostly. Words like too soon and disrespectful and what will people think got thrown around the kitchen like brittle ornaments. Mom cried quietly into a dish towel, torn between her husband's grief and her daughter's tentative joy. Through it all, Cole stood in the doorway, hat in hand, shoulders squared. He took every word Dad threw at him without flinching, but he didn't back down either. I loved her, he said, his voice steady even when it shook. I'll grieve her every Christmas for the rest of my life. But I also love your daughter. And I'm standing here, telling you that to your face, because hiding it would be worse. For all of us. Dad's fists clenched on the back of a chair. You think loving one fixes the other? He demanded. No, Cole said softly. I think loving her is the only way I know how to make anything worth a damn out of the years I've got left. The alternative is sitting alone in that house until I die, and I don't think that's what she would have wanted for me. Or for Lily. I'd never heard him say so many words in one stretch. Dad sagged into the chair like someone had let the air out of him. Get out, he said hoarsely. My stomach dropped. Daddy, not forever, he added, pinching the bridge of his nose. I need time. I can't look at him and not see the last Christmas I had with her. That's my problem, not his. But right now it hurts. The honesty in that nearly undid me. Cole nodded like he understood. I'll give you whatever time you need, sir, but I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here. When you're ready. He looked at me then, and the quiet strength in his gaze helped me breathe. We stepped out into the cold together, the kitchen door clicking softly behind us. You okay? He asked. No, I said, my throat tight. But also, yes. Welcome to loving someone, he said gently. It's never just one thing. The New Year's chili cook-off and fundraiser was a blur of color and sound.
The church parking lot glittered under strings of lights. Tables groaned under crock-pots and cornbread and pies.
Kids ran around with sparklers, their laughter cutting through the cold. We set up a little story corner under a canopy with a space heater, where people could record short videos about what the rodeo grounds meant to them. I guided shy ranchers and brave 8-year-olds and retired barrel racers through their stories. My phone propped on a tripod. Online, the donations page ticked steadily upward. People from other states, even other countries, chimed in with messages of support. Former Pine Hollow residents sent money and memories. We hit our goal halfway through the evening. Pastor Jim announced it from the little makeshift stage, his voice thick with emotion. "We're going to build those bleachers back stronger than before," he declared. "And when next Christmas comes, we'll sit on them with gratitude and maybe just a little more humility." The crowd cheered. In the swirl of hugs and high fives, I felt a hand find mine. Cole stood beside me, his eyes on the crowd, his grip warm and sure. "We did it," I said, my voice barely audible. "You did it," he corrected. "You and this whole stubborn town. And you," I said. "Don't sell yourself short, Hart." He squeezed my hand. "If you want more slow-burn cowboy Christmas nights like this," that inner whisper smiled,
"subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next." When midnight came, we stood out in the snow with everyone else, breath fogging, listening to the countdown. 3, 2, 1, Happy New Year. People whooped.
Someone set off a small firework, a burst of color against the winter sky. Beside me, Cole turned. "New Year," he said.
"New bleachers," I replied. "New us," he added quietly. My heart flipped.
I stepped in, shameless now, and slid my arms around his waist. He wrapped his around me, pulling me in against his chest, tucking me under his chin like he'd been doing it all his life. "If the storm gets worse," he murmured against my hair, "I'll stay." "I know," I whispered, "and if Christmas feels heavy next year, you won't be facing it alone." We kissed there in the snow, surrounded by our messy, stubborn, beautiful town, under a sky that had watched more winters than we could imagine.
It wasn't perfect. My dad still needed time. There would be gossip.
There would be days when the ghosts felt too close and the wind too sharp. But as his fingers laced with mine and the new year rolled in like a fresh drift across an old field,
I felt something I hadn't in a very long time. Home, a year later on Christmas Eve, I sat in the rebuilt bleachers at the Pine Hollow Rodeo grounds.
This time, they were steel and concrete, inspected within an inch of their lives. This time, the wind whistled harmlessly around them instead of groaning through rusted bolts. This time, when the announcer welcomed everyone to the Christmas Eve charity rodeo, the roar of the crowd washed over me and felt like joy instead of anxiety. Mom sat on one side of me, bundled in her biggest coat, a thermos of cocoa in her hands. Dad sat on the other, his expression gruff but softer than it had been a year ago. Down in the arena, Cole swung into the saddle of a bay gelding, his movements easy and sure. The lights glinted off the new bleachers, off his hat brim, off the faint smile he sent up toward where he knew I was sitting. Our eyes met. This time I didn't look away. Later that night, when the last horse was loaded and the arena lights dimmed, we drove back to the ranch we now shared. The little house was still simple, still smelled like wood smoke and coffee and pine.
But there were new things now: a second mug on the counter, my boots by the door next to his, a set of framed photos on the wall. One of us in front of the church with my parents. One of the kids at the chili cook-off, faces smeared with beans and joy. One of the rebuilt bleachers, shining in the winter sun. In the corner of the living room stood a real Christmas tree, taller than last year's potted pine. Lights twinkled softly. Ornaments hung from its branches, some old, some new. There was a small silver frame with Maggie's photo near the top, tied with a red ribbon. I paused there, touching the frame lightly. "You think she'd approve?" I asked softly. Cole came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist, his chin coming to rest on my shoulder. "I think she'd be glad I finally stopped being an idiot," he murmured. I smiled, my eyes misting.
We curled up on the couch under a quilt, the wood stove humming, the storm gathering itself quietly outside.
My head rested on his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath my ear. "Remember last Christmas Eve?"
I asked. "Hard to forget," he said. World fell down.
"Everything changed. You buried me under your body to save my life," I said. "Some girls get flowers." He chuckled, the sound a low vibration under my cheek.
"Next time I'll try to find a less dramatic way to tell you I love you," he said.
"I don't know," I mused. "Kind of set the bar high." He pressed a kiss to the top of my head. "If you're still here with us," that soft inner narrator whispered one last time, "I hope you feel as warm and safe as I do right now. I hope you know that storms pass, hearts heal, and sometimes the love you're not supposed to find is the one that ends up saving you."
Outside, snow began to fall soft, slow, quiet. Inside, held in the arms of the man I wasn't supposed to love and absolutely did. I closed my eyes and let the future stretch out in front of us like a long, open winter road. Not easy, not simple, but ours. And for the first time in a very long time, that was enough.